In recent years, some of Boston's neighborhoods have been tapping the potential of culture for economic and human development. Part of that is putting a spotlight on cultural assets that are usually marginalized, but it can also mean creating new bridges to other cultures or between past and future. That's part of the mission for the Roxbury Cultural District, making its own bridge to the future with new leadership. We'd like to welcome the new president of its Board of Trustees, Daniel Callahan, and the vice president, Kelley Chunn. Thank you both for being with us once again.
Thanks, Chris, for having us.
Yeah,
I want to start with Kelley on this because I think certainly, given your history in Boston and in Roxbury, I look at that and I say, well, cultural assets in Roxbury, that's not really new. So what does this district do that is new?
Well, I think it's the connection to economic development. How can we use the arts and cultural assets of, in this case, Nubian Square, formerly Dudley Square, and John Eliot Square, the two the areas that comprise the Roxbury Cultural District. How can we use those arts and cultural assets to further the economic development of the community, and also to lift up artists who, particularly African-American artists who are based in the community of Roxbury. So I think that's the difference. And that's really the purpose of the, I don't know, I guess it's maybe 50 cultural districts across the state of Massachusetts.
Daniel, I want to look in the other direction here toward the future because you're a young artist and maybe not originally from Roxbury, but you got involved here. You got really engaged in the community. Why is this important to you for your own development as an artist?
Yeah, sure. I think to speak to your last question as well, I mean, a large part of the district is in recognition of the arts and culture that has been in Roxbury for such a long time. I think that recognition is really important because there is a lot of history in Roxbury. Roxbury has been considered sort of the Black Mecca of Boston for a very long time, and awarding that designation is not only important because it recognizes the future, but it's important because it recognizes the past and the present in terms of the richness of the culture that's in Roxbury. But to talk about the future, when I came back to Boston, I was very apprehensive coming back to Boston for several reasons. The primary reason being that I wasn't sure that this was going to be an environment where my art could flourish, but it actually was. And the community that I found here, the support that I found here was really important to my career. And this was a watershed moment really in Roxbury with my career when I started doing my work around masking. And so I want to make sure that all artists in Roxbury have that same experience because oftentimes there are not the resources around artists to allow them to flourish. And if we can create a place where we can all flourish in Roxbury, then the richness of that neighborhood can be really fully seen. I don't think its potential has been fully tapped as of yet.
Kelley, what's your idea of flourishing, the opportunities for artists that they would otherwise not be getting if not for something like this district?
Well, I think part of our mission is to activate some of the connections between the organizations in the district that are already providing arts and cultural programming. So how can we in the district promote the programming that happens at Hibernian Hall? They have a very robust arts and cultural agenda, activities on a monthly basis that lift up community-based artists. Haley House, not so much now because of the pandemic, and this programming is virtual at this point, but lifting up some of the arts and cultural programming that Haley House does as well. There will be, as part of the first night activities in a few weeks, I believe there's an effort underway to feature ice sculptures in Nubian Square. The American City Coalition is behind some of that planning. So how can we activate and connect the programming that's already occurring in the district? That's really part of our mission.
Daniel, how important is it for you in your development or the development of any artist to be able to bring in people who have not been engaged very much in structured cultural events?
Oh, I see. Yeah. I mean, it's everything, mainly because when you're in a city or a neighborhood that has been strategically underfunded for such a long time, a lot of people do drop out. You know, art unfortunately is seen as sort of a commodity that is a luxury, and that is one of the first things that we cut when we're facing economic hardship. And because of that, there's a lot of people who have the potential to not only be in the arts or even to be a patron of the arts who can no longer do that or no longer feel that is possible. And so there's so much untapped potential in Roxbury because it's been so underfunded and under utilized, I think. I think also, you know, kind of to what Kelley's point was, is that we don't want to enter this space in the sort of guise of competition where we are going to be yet another organization in Roxbury trying to compete for a small amount of grant funding that we all are kind of vying for. And that, I think that spirit of competition doesn't render a space that can be, that ecosystem that can be healthy to the arts. And so a big thing for us is to enter this space through a spirit of not competition, but of community and of collaboration. And like Kelley said, being like sort of a hub that can connect all these arts and cultural practices that are already happening in the district, right? We are approaching this with the understanding that we already have what we need. It's just a question of bringing all that together in a coordinated way so that we can all benefit instead of compete.
And if I may add, Chris, and I think part of our mission is to change the narrative of the community. You are very much aware of what's going on in Roxbury in terms of arts and culture, but there are many people outside of the community who don't think of arts and culture when they think about Roxbury. So I think part of our mission is really to broaden the narrative and let people know that there are arts and cultural assets. There are artists who are really strong cultural workers, and increase awareness of that as well.
You know, one narrative that's become very familiar, even if it's not entirely true, is that places like Nubian Square, they're hurting from disinvestment. People in the surrounding neighborhoods don't have resources. But what I'm also hearing from at least one study is that there are people who live in that radius who do have resources, but they're directing them somewhere else.
That is a challenge. That is a challenge. The American City Coalition has just, earlier this year, they did a marketing study of how people, and part of it focused on, you know, where people spend their money. People who live near in Nubian Square, where do they go to eat? Where do they go to spend their dollars? And that is part of the challenge, is convincing people that, you know, you can come to Nubian Square. Again, this is understanding that we're in a pandemic, obviously, but you can go and eat at the Suya joint. You can buy books at Frugal Bookstore. You can grab a cup of coffee at the Dudley Cafe. You know, there
the Black Market.
And you can go and for arts and crafts at the Black Market. So there is, again, you know, there is an opportunity for people to spend time and spend money and to be in community, to Daniel's point in
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Kelley.
Go ahead.
I also think that, like, you know, I don't think it's going to be a problem of folks coming into Roxbury. And I think folks are coming into Roxbury. I think a lot of development is coming into Roxbury already. And I think with that development will be this sort of surge of people who may have not considered Roxbury a destination, starting to consider Roxbury a destination. I think the issue here also is creating an organized structure to our arts and culture so that we can all benefit from that influx and not necessarily be, you know, pushed out from that influx. And I think that's what a lot of people are worried about at this point in time, is that with all this interest coming in, how are we going to maintain what we do? And so that is also part of sort of what the Roxbury Cultural District looks to address, is how do we build an infrastructure that can support people coming in, and that can elevate the arts that are happening here, so that when they do come in, they can see those you know, in their fullest potential.
Daniel, I think one thing I'm sure that you and Kelley have both noticed, like a lot of people have noticed over the past few months, is that Nubian Square has become a sort of a trailhead for protest action in the city. And I'm trying to say, is there a connection between that and the mission of culture? Culture is always supposed to be a way of addressing conflict. So do you take a cue from that in some way?
Oh yeah. I mean, Roxbury is repping right now. and it's you know, it has to, because again, this is a community that has been historically Black for a very long period of time, a community that has been historically divested a lot of the time, and all those things are coming to a head with this pandemic, because it's revealing all these inequalities. And so it has become a hotbed out of necessity, and we definitely have to take a page from that. We have to use the momentum that's building there to further our goals to enrich this part of Boston, and to, yeah, like, again, to let people know that this is the challenge that we're facing, but also look at what we've been able to accomplish despite those challenges, because those challenges, and how can we continue to support those people who are making that difference through these challenges.
Finally, Kelley, in the near future, some steps with the organization that you've got planned?
Well, as Daniel alluded earlier in the conversation, we've been doing a lot of internal work because the pandemic has kind of put a damper on programming and so forth. So we reconfigured our board. We're in the process of board recruitment. If people are watching or listening and have an interest in arts and culture in Roxbury and feel that they have something to contribute, you know, we encourage them to go to the website. It's www.roxburyculturaldistrict.com, and contact us. We'll give you an overview of our history and what we've been doing. And there are also plans for us to share office space in Nubian Square. Come the spring, you know, once we get more of a sense of where we're going, you know, with vaccinations and, you know, the level of pandemic and so forth. So there are some, there is a vision to move forward. Daniel might want to say something about the strategic planning that we also have underway.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so in addition to our internal strategic plan, we've also been involved with the generous support of the Boston Foundation and placemaking and placekeeping initiatives, and we were in the placemaking leadership network that we were in for a little while, and we've been developing certain ways to maintain the economic potentials that are arising in the redevelopment of the district,
and make sure that the community benefits from that.
Yes,
exactly,
absolutely. Capturing that involvement and feeding that back into the community instead of you know, displacing the community.
Finally,
and so yeah,
for you've got a website with some updates that people can check out too.
Yes.
Yes, RoxburyCulturalDistrict.com. And that's where all of our information will be.
Well, thank you both very much for taking the time to join us.
Thanks for having us, Chris.
Great.
Thank you.
Good to see you both again. Kelley Chunn and Daniel Callahan for the Roxbury Cultural District.
Bye-bye.
We'll have more news in just a moment.